you've had this, you have this inter-union rivalry. You have a more radical voice on the Labour side in the form of AMCU, and that in turn, I'm sure Mike will talk about this, has had an impact on the biennial labour wage negotiations between the Chamber of Mines and all the unions, which have had to involve the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation, Arbitration, the CCMA. And those of you who follow these things will know that at the beginning of these negotiations, AMCU were looking for an increase in wages of 150% to 12,500 Rand a month. The NUM demanded something more modest, between 15 and 16%, and the other unions less than that. The Chamber, on the other hand, proposed an increase of 5%, and this was eventually resolved after a 3-day strike of a wage increase between 7.5% and 8%, which is within, broadly speaking, the inflation rate. But the problem is that has a direct knock-on effect in terms of the extra costs that the mining industry has to bear, which will increase by 1.5 billion Rand over the next year. And that's the next point I want to make, is that these wage increases in the mining sector, ladies and gentlemen, are simply not sustainable, because for the last 5 years we've experienced wage increases of 12.3% a year, and that, you will immediately appreciate, is more than double the consumer inflation rate, which is currently 6.5%, but prior to this has been substantially less than that. And the industry simply, in my view, can't afford double-digit wage increases. In fact, if you look at the statistics, labor costs already cost the industry, represent about 50% of the mining industry's fixed costs. And the problem about all of this is that eventually something has to give, because if commodity prices continue to decline, and at the moment they're very erratic, and labor costs keep increasing, and other administered costs, which I'll talk about in a moment, increase as well, something has to give. And unfortunately that something is employment. And you would have seen in the last year that the mining industry has already lost 23,000 jobs, which is a 4.5% decrease in employment, and 4,000 of those jobs were lost between April and June 2013. So I'm afraid the result is going to be more mechanization and less employment unless this is looked at.
The challenge we're sitting with is to get our industry functioning properly, to get our industry working in order. Now, Peter touched on Fraser Institute. I like to read about this. In fact, this year the Chamber of Mines invited Fred McMahon, one of the authors of the Fraser Institute report. When you read this report, you start to question, you are concerned about 64 of 96 countries, South Africa. Number 2, Botswana is the highest ranked African country at number 17. Number 3, if you read the reports globally, they give you comments about countries where people would like to invest. Especially they look at those companies, company executives who go around the world and saying we're exploring or looking for opportunities. Those comments that are related to South Africa and Zimbabwe and some of the African countries are not comments that you want to read. Go and read that report. Strikes, violence, corruption, all those issues are a big concern for us. And I believe we have lessons to learn out of the Fraser Institute report. If you are not properly governed, if you have corruption, if your civil servants are corrupt in a country, you will face that risk and you will deter investors. And all of us who are sitting here, we tend to talk about foreign direct investments for South Africa. Let's not contradict ourselves. How do we deal with these challenges? Number 1 is to acknowledge that the game has changed with all our stakeholders. Our employees things have changed. We've got new unions. I've spoken about AMCU. When I was negotiating with NAM in the year 2000 and 2001 with Gwede Mantashe, I knew it was NAM, Solidarity, UASA. These days, the new people are dealing with new unions. If you talk about another stakeholder called the communities are expecting certain things. We want to be shareholders. We want to know what's happening in this mine. And we want opportunities. They want procurement opportunities. They want all those to happen to them. The third issue comes the issue of shareholders who are saying to you, you can't spend too much money, we want dividends. You grow the business, you make money, cash flow, and you give us dividends. Time has come where we need to acknowledge that the game has changed. You are a generation, most of you, where you're sitting in the situation where you have to deal with these issues. I am part of that. Begin to engage on productivity, work ethic, and growth matters. Yes, we talk about 8%, 15%, 20%. We want so much increase, but it is time that we start engaging on, do you know where we get this money? Do you know that the fixed cost in our books, it's a labor cost that is X percentage, and we need to work hard in ensuring that for you to survive in this business, for you to have this industry growing, you need to be productive. That story about the work ethic in South Africa is becoming a serious matter. And then we need to accelerate on economic growth and enable us like skills development, investment, infrastructure development, etc.